So we're just welcoming everybody to our first coffee and chats with you. So today we are joined by some of our WAFAs, but two in particular, Emma and Jane, who have been with WAFA for quite some time now. And in that time have been on their own transformation journeys. So why can't I'm going to mute, is everybody muted? For some reason I can't mute everybody. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to just unmute Emma, because I'd love Emma to tell us her story. So I'm just going to unmute you. Okay, so ladies, if any questions come into your head, you can pop them into the chat box, but there will be plenty of opportunity because this is really an opportunity for you to ask two very successful women in their transformation, probably done a better job than myself, to be fair. Ask them lots of questions. The idea is that those of you're all here because you're obviously looking to improve your health. And so it's a chance for you to ask them about their tips and tricks to get through the transformation. So Sergit's already asking questions, so I'll come to you soon. All right, Emma, so can you hear me? Can you just say hello?
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hello. Right?
Hello. Wow. Doesn't it? So
I feel nervous as well.
Oh, don't be nervous, it's just the WAFAs. So what I want you to do, I guess, is to really cast your mind back to the time before WAFA was part of your life, and just to tell us a bit about where you were at in, I know the reason why you joined WAFA, which we'll come on to, but just to really talk about where you were in mindset, how you were feeling about yourself and what you were doing.
So I, probably about 4 years before I started WAFA, I had kind of just taken control a little bit of my life in terms of fitness and checking in on my weight, and I did quite well, and I lost a good amount of weight, and I quite enjoyed being where I was. But then gradually over I probably worked on it for about 6 to 9 months, and then I must have literally just stopped. I don't really remember, I don't know what I did or didn't do, but the weight just started to come back up, and I got to a point where I was exactly the weight that I had been before I'd lost weight. And for me, I think back, and actually you asking me to do this made me think about kind of my dress size. And I remember going, when I went to university, which was, well, I'll give my age away, 1998, I was 18, and I was wearing size 16 jeans. And I have never, ever, ever in my life worn anything other than a size 16 jean or like a man size jeans, because of the shapes of my hips. I could never get anything that I found to flatter me. And I think that just prior to joining WAFA, I was disappointed in myself that I had let it go. I wasn't happy. I felt I couldn't find an exercise regime or routine that I stuck to. And I've always been pretty active. So, and I've always dipped in and out of things, whether it being teaching myself to run or gym or spin. But there was just nothing at all that would stick. And I've learned very recently, I've always known as a control freak, but I am a huge control freak, and I like order and I like structure. And then, so with all of these feelings, my now husband proposed to me, of sorts. We agreed to get married, I think is how we put it. And that was November of 2018. And we decided to have a really short engagement, which was cool, because we'd been together long enough. And the next thing that would happen was I just took a look at myself and thought, oh my God, I'm suddenly going to be the center of attention, and I'm not happy with how I look and how I feel. And all the fear came in about dress shopping. And we go away, my husband's got children who live in New Zealand. So we were in New Zealand, and I just kept seeing the WAFA ads come up on my Facebook page. And so one early morning or evening, I remember messaging Anna and going, can I do this in January? And you were like, yeah, let's talk when you get back from your holidays. And so I joined in January, middle to end of January 2019.
So you joined, was it January 2019? So that's a year and a bit ago. Okay. So when you first joined, you obviously joined our Body Fix in six-week program. So that was, I guess, the start of your journey. So what can you remember? I mean, it's such a long time ago. Obviously, the wedding was very much your focus and your goal. What do you think you started to do in that first 6 weeks to make the changes that you needed to make?
I remember it actually really well, because I remember feeling that I needed to do something, and I remember feeling that I needed to be invested in the 6-week program. I'm a very much get in it, do it type of person. And I really remember all of the sort of the preliminary conversations that we had, and then all the emails with all the resources. And you know, it really came out to me that this is not just about doing your exercise, but it's also about your nutrition. And I remember you saying you need to read these things before you start, and start prepping like food and things. And I just took one look at a nutrition guide and I panicked, and I was like, oh, my life's too busy, I can't deal with this, I don't know how to do it, it's just too overwhelming. So I kind of put it to the side, and I took some measurements anyway, because I think that was the weekend before I started on the Monday. And just made that the decision that actually the principle behind it was watching what you eat. And so I read through there and saw your 1400 calorie goal, and I thought, that sounds really doable, because I think in the past I tried to stick to a 1200 calorie goal. So I was like, that's quite good. So first of all, I just started by tracking my food, and by the end of that first week, I'd grown in the confidence to actually think more about what I was cooking, what I was going to eat, and how I was going to get the best food balance within that calorie goal. And yeah, so that's kind of how it, and for me at that point, the goal for me was simply, I just wanted to lose about 5 kilograms in weight by June. And that felt like a really manageable thing to do. And actually that had fallen off me within the 6 weeks. And that was the start of things.
It sure had. And so that was 6 weeks ago. Then did you find at any point that you were struggling, or how did you keep yourself going? Because now, how much have you lost now?
It's about 14 and a half kilograms, which I did some stats. I've got a little piece of paper with my stats, so I was like, she's going to ask me questions. So people who use pounds, that's about 31, 32 pounds, or just over 2 stone, about 2 1/3 stone.
And that I mean, that is obviously incredible. And in terms of your size, because actually what you can't see, and Emma's physique has completely changed. And now she has these sort of incredible shoulders and arms that we're all very envious of. That you didn't really have. I mean, you were always sort of very shapely when you first joined, and you were quite fit, but now there's real definition showing. So, you know, what would you say to the WAFAs here today about their health journey? Because all of them have dialed in because they're thinking, I need to I need some support in some way. So what would you be saying to them as the best advice you could give them?
First of all, don't be a slave to what it says on your scales. I'm not going to lie, I go against the general rules, and I do weigh myself every single morning. But that's because I've now got to the point where I'm quite interested in how exercise, and when I've got muscle strain, how that affects my weight, and certain things that I eat bloat me. I'm quite interested in kind of some of the science behind it now. So I've kind of moved on a little bit. But don't be a slave to what you need to lose weight-wise, because what I couldn't quite get over was, even with just losing a small amount of weight, as Anna said, my body shape started to change dramatically. And I went from sort of my t-shirts if it was a baggy one, I could get away with a size 14 top. Otherwise, everything I wore was a 16, and on like pencil skirts for suits for works would sometimes be in an 18. Although I've always had a small waist but huge hips. And now, like, I don't know if you can see, this is a stretchy size 10, and it's too big. Well, it's not too big, it fits lovely. And on my bottoms, I don't wear anything bigger than a size 12. And I couldn't, that to me in my head, I still can't equate how that much of a change in the shape of me has, you know, because I think for me, only about 2 stone would actually only be maybe a dress size or 2, but actually it's the way that your body changes. And I think a huge thing is actually taking those measurements and taking those photographs. And I remember putting the photographs from my starting point to a midway and looking at them, you know, maybe taking pictures every 8 weeks or something, and then going back. And that's when you really just start to see. And nobody knows what I actually weigh. I don't tell anyone what I actually weigh. I'm happy to tell you what I've lost, but you can guess what I weigh. Because to be honest, you probably think, oh, if she's a size 10, 12, she weighs X, but I can tell you I don't, and I'm heavier than that. But that's because there's muscle mass, there's all sorts of things going on inside my body, and I'm no expert, but I'm really quite comfortable with that. I think my biggest thing is just find the rules that work for you. Don't think of it as a diet. For me, a huge thing was the community and the support that I've received, not just from Anna, but from fellow WAFers. I mean, what some of you won't know is that Jane, who's going to speak shortly, is actually in the house just on the other side of that wall there, basically. She's my next door but one neighbour, and I didn't know her until I started WAFA. So for me, it's just been that thing of meeting people, support, who are all supporting each other, because we all have the same thing in our goal, which is we all want to be healthier. And that means different things to everybody. And my stories, because it's personal to me, and it's not going to be exactly the same for anybody on this call. There'll be themes which will resonate, I'm sure. But for me, it's about, and the way that I keep on track is I need something to keep myself accountable to. And I've started to really understand what my weaknesses are. So for me, I'm like a snacker. You know, I'm good. I won't need to buy things, but if there's something in the house, I really will eat it. I've got a best friend, and she has always been that person with a big box of biscuits. She can have one and then not touch them for another week. Whereas I'm that person who's like, biscuits, they're there, so they have to be eaten. So it's about kind of understanding yourself and accepting yourself, and then just seeing if you can make a bit of a difference. That's kind of how I look at it. And I've actually gone in and out of the 28-day challenges to try and help bring myself back into those good habits, because I'm not perfect, and it's really easy to get yourself out of a habit really quickly. And I think for many of us over the past 3 weeks, it's really hit us hard, and everything's kind of disappears. And we start from ground zero almost again. So for me, it's rules. I'm a real rules person. That works for me.
Thank you very much. I totally agree. I mean, I have to admit, with the last 3 weeks, in fact, just literally since the sort of whole sort of shutting down of everything, I mean, I'm always very honest with everybody, and I say I'm definitely not perfect. And one thing I've really observed, and because my head has been totally absorbed in keeping WAFA alive and so on, but bad habits will always try and come back. They are almost quite evil. They're like weeds in the garden. No matter how much you try and get rid of weeds, they will always find some little gap to get through. And I think bad habits will never ever leave us. So it's about finding ways to manage those bad habits, and be more accepting of them.
Yeah.
Because I think if you start telling yourself that you can't do this and you can't do that, and you must, you know, then the bad habits will still come back. So it is about finding mechanisms and finding things that work and that can fit within your lifestyle, for sure. But the more that you work at it, and I think Emma is a good example, this isn't a journey that was just started and was finished in 6 weeks. This is a journey that has been running for over a year now, and I suspect will continue to change. You know, the health journey that we're all on is like ebbs and flows, and it never really ends. Nobody is perfect. And I think, but you know, we can be the best version of ourselves, and I think that is really important. So Emma, honestly, I'm so pleased. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll come to questions in a moment, because I'm gonna mute you, not on purpose, but have you got anything else that you would like to say to the WAFAs?
I would just be kind to yourself. You will have really rubbish days. We all do. That's normal. We're women as well. So there's that really hideous monthly cycle that we go through. Regardless of what your age is, it will be affecting all of us in very different ways. And you have to be accepting, because I just couldn't understand. I think it was my 2nd week into WAFA, or my 3rd week. And I was like, I just want to eat. And I couldn't understand why that was. And then I did, because a couple of days later, I started my cycle. So you just need to accept that we're quite complicated creatures, and be comfortable with that. And just accept you have a bad day, but don't wait until next week to start again. Try and reset the day after.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma. You're absolutely right. Yesterday, I definitely had a flat day, and I was just like, pfft. But today I was like, yes, come on, the world is good and I'm feeling great. So yeah, hormonal. Right, I am now going to mute you, and I'm going to unmute the lovely Jane. So Jane, hello.
Hello.
So I would like you to rewind, I guess, now to life before WAFA, and just explain where you were. I mean, I know your story pretty well, and you know, and just tell us a bit more about your journey back to health.
Okay, so I would say I'm in my 50s now, and I would say up until, I don't know, mid to late 40s, I was still pretty healthy, exercising, you know, leading a fairly healthy life. We moved here in 2013 to London. We'd lived in the Lake District. So it wasn't hard not to be that healthy in the Lake District. You don't, you know, I used to walk a lot. I was quite hill fit. I was, you know, I was a good weight. I was happy with everything. Moved to London, everything was fine. Then I hit 49, 50, and perimenopause hit me. And I mean, I am not having a bad time compared to some women, but the weight did start to creep on quite easily, where it never really done that before. I suppose my life started to be a bit more sedentary. I wasn't doing all the walking I'd been doing in the lakes. And I think it was probably over about 2 years, I put on 2 stone. And which was, you know, I'm only 5'4", so that a 2 stone for me was a lot. I was probably a good 10 pounds heavier than I was when I was 9 months pregnant with my second daughter, and she was a 9-pound baby. So it was a lot. But it had crept on over the couple of years, as I said, and I obviously was getting big, buying bigger clothes, but I suppose I don't know, I was making excuses for myself anyway. Cut a long story short, it was November the 10th, 2018, and I was rolling around with my 2 dogs on the floor, as I do, 2 Springer Spaniels, and I actually struggled to get up. And I thought, oh my God. And I thought, that's it. And up until that point, you know, a few weeks, couple of months leading up to that, I thought I really have to start, you know, losing some weight. And I would half-hearted attempt. And then this, I just couldn't believe. I was struggling to get up. And I thought, right. And I felt a little bit emotional about it, and thought, well, I have to do something. And my husband is very lovely and supportive, and he'd been making hints and things, but you know, unless you make that switch, until that switch goes on in your own brain, doesn't matter what people say to you, doesn't matter. And anyway, it just so happened I was flicking through Facebook, and I think it is meant to be, Anna, because I saw for the first time your advert that night or the next morning or something. And I thought, right, and I didn't even think about it. You can overthink stuff. I messaged you, and you rang me that night, and I started on Monday, the 12th of November, 2018, and that was it. And I have not genuinely looked back since. And like Emma, I just threw myself, I just thought, no, I've got to change. And that's one of the things I'd say. Be really clear what it is you want to do and why, and be really clear it's for yourself. Because if you're trying to meet other people's expectations, or you know, doing it because somebody else is saying, I really think you need to lose a bit of weight, or you need to get fitter, or you won't do it. You've really got to be honest about why you're doing it, and do it and be clear it's for yourself. So those first, you know, I've joined the Body Fix in 6. Like Emma, I read all your guides, I had a long talk to you, and 2 things that I did was I had at the forefront of mind something you said to me. It's 80% food, 20% exercise. So I committed to the nutritional plans. I logged my food on the food app you told me to put on my phone religiously for 1 month. And I followed all your recipes. I adapted them for taste and things, but I removed temptation from my house. I sat down with my husband and my daughters and said, I'm doing this, so there's going to be certain things I'm not having in the house. I'll come on to my 2 bad habits and what I had to ban from the house. And they were fully on board. And I mean, I do have actually quite strong willpower. So I think once I had made that decision, then I pretty much stuck to it. But logging the food was really, really important, and sticking to the calorie plan. Although I didn't consider myself on a diet, so I would just tweak things, but I knew roughly, and as the weeks went on, you could adjust things, and you would know yourself when you were, you know, eating well and when you weren't. But the 2 big things I had to do, so I had to be very honest with myself, and I think probably these 2 bad habits accounted for the majority of my weight gain. But I went back because I was obviously unhappy with myself, and when I look back to how I feel now to when I feel then, I didn't realize how down I was feeling. I was feeling really down compared to how I am now, but it wasn't evident to me because it was like this sort of slow decline, if you like. But the 2 things I did, and it was a reverting to comfort, emotional eating. So nearly every night, not every night, I'd sit down with my to watch a 9 o'clock drama. I'd have a big mashed banana in a big bowl, cornflakes, full fat milk and cream. And I did that every night. And that was going back to when I was pregnant, because when I was really, really hungry, I would have that in the middle of the night sometimes, but it was okay because I needed extra calories. And as soon as I'd had, you know, fear, that stopped. I don't know what triggered me to go back to that, but it was nearly every night. My other thing, probably 3 or 4 times a week, I'd have a white wine spritzer with lemonade. So what got banned from my house was full fat milk and cream, white wine and lemonade. And I just, to ensure that they weren't there for the first month, so that I wasn't really tempted by anything else. It was those 2 things. And because my eldest daughter, who was studying biology at the time, she's graduated now, she told me something really interesting about one of her neurological modules. She said it's a minimum of 3 weeks of consistent behavior to either form a good habit or break a bad habit. You need to do it for a minimum of 3 weeks consistently. Absolutely no rule breaking whatsoever. Not having a day off from it, but literally. So for those, you know, I just committed on November the 12th, 2018, no more white wine spritzers, no more mashed banana, cornflakes and cream. And I can say, hand on heart, I have not done it to date at all, because they are my emotional triggers and I'm not going back to that. What I did do was identify what I could replace, because I wasn't hungry at 9 o'clock at night, but I just needed something. So I just replaced it. So it sounds really boring, but I got to really like it, and I did it every night. And in fact, I've just had a cup of it now, peppermint and licorice tea, because I obviously wanted something sweet, and I would just sit and watch my 9 o'clock drama and sip on a cup of that tea. And yeah, it wasn't as satisfying as my mashed banana, cornflakes and cream. But honestly, after about a week, I actually looked forward to my peppermint and licorice tea. And I wasn't, and I think, so you just have to start, whatever it is your bad habit, be really honest about it. And I think the other thing is, if you've got a lot of bad habits to break, then don't beat yourself up. Choose the top 3 or whatever. Don't take it in small steps. Small wins will lead to bigger wins. Don't overwhelm yourself. I had 2 very bad habits, and I knew I had to kick them immediately, and that's what I did, and that made a big difference to me. But there's other stuff as well you can do. So I just then started looking at, how can I just get healthier, generally in my life, in my normal routine. So the other thing was, obviously, I was committing to those 3 classes a week. That was about the habits, the 3 weeks of, do that. So absolutely commit to those 3 classes and do them. Just do them. And I can honestly say I have never regretted doing a class, but I have regretted not doing one. So just stick to that. But the other things I did, so for example, I work at the British Museum, so I would now I can run up the the Tottenham Court Road escalator. So I just started doing that. When I got to the escalator at the bottom of Tottenham Court Road Tube, I would always just sit like everybody else on the right-hand side and let it take me up. Now I run up it. At the time, I managed to walk quarter of the way. Then after a couple of weeks, I could walk half of the way. Then I was able to walk all of the way. And now I would say, I don't sprint up it, but I do jog up it. And I do that every single time. It might be, if you have to get a bus somewhere, got to get off a stop earlier, walk, just try and do anything that, helps you just to incorporate healthier things into your life. So does that, sorry, I rambled on for ages.
No, you have. That's absolutely amazing. And also, Jane, I think we also, just going back to the exercise, when you first joined, do you remember you had Jane, again, this is about making changes that can last longer than 6 weeks, and making small incremental changes and making those commitments. So doing those 3 classes, and this is not about me selling WAFA, this is about when Jane first joined, that you had specific lower back problems. And so the exercises were quite challenging. So what we did is, there were some exercises we completely adapted. And it was that realization that actually you have to build your strength at your pace and at your level, and you have to see it as the long-term game. And so you had the lower back problems, we adapted the exercises, but today you are in the running club. You're just like, you're sort of throwing power bags up above your head. It's just a completely different ball game. But this is something that's happened. This started in November 2018. So again, it's about building over time and not trying to do, as you say, Jane, everything at once. And I think we all realized when we did the 28-day challenge for the first time, everybody found all their bad habits, listed them all out and said, I'm going to do all of this. And actually by week 3, as your daughter has rightfully said, you're either going to break that habit or you're going to go back to that bad habit. So it is when you've got a long journey ahead of you, it is about breaking it down and working at a pace that's going to be manageable for you. You know,
Yeah.
rather than thinking, oh my God, and be overwhelmed and think, oh my God, I've got so much to do. Where the hell do I even begin? Actually, find the one thing that, as you did, you know, your banana and cornflakes and cream and, you know, but that was a habit that you got into by removing that habit and finding something you could replace it with that was healthier, meant that you still had that little, when you had that trigger moment, you had something that you could have that was a healthier option that would somehow satisfy that need that you had at the time.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that's about, and you learn as you go on, I mean, I was brutally honest with myself at the beginning. But I think you do learn, like Emma says, you get to know yourself and you get to know when those pinch points are and when you might, you know, sort of go back to a habit. But the other thing I would say is I have never, I don't do dieting. I just don't do it. So I have never felt deprived ever. And what I would say is I refuse to allow myself to feel guilty if I've had something, if I've eaten something, or if I've had a bad day. I just move on and think, well, I'll adjust the next day, I'll adjust at the next meal. Just let it go. It really, life's too short, you know, because you can't live like that, you know, you just can't. So just let it go, think, okay, and next meal be good, next day be good, adjust. And I think that's, you know, and I don't weigh myself. I mean, I was weighing myself once a week up until so I've lost 2 stone. I'm back to I don't mind saying what I'm 9 stone 6 now, so I'm in a size 8 to 10 clothes now. But you know, if I feel I've put on a few, and the other thing is women's bodies fluctuate, you know, weight wise. So please do not be a slave to the scales. And I tell you what I do though, which I think is far more useful. And this just is my little prompt. If I think, you know, I need to maybe do something, just tweak things or whatever. I do what you told me, Anna. If I feel I've just, you know, slipped a bit or I've put on a little bit of weight I'm not happy about, I fast once a week for 22 hours. And that in a couple of weeks, that seems to just work for me. But what I do, which is helpful, I have reference clothes. So when I reached my target weight, there were clothes in that wardrobe I hadn't worn for years because I couldn't get in them, and that I loved and that I wanted to wear again. And when I got back into them, I felt, you know, what does this feel like? I put those clothes on, I felt good, I was happy. And I also felt, what do they feel like on my body? And I have 2 items of clothing, which I know if I've put on a few pounds or whatever, or even if I've lost a few, I know how those clothes feel different. So they are I call them my reference clothes. I would rather do that than get on the scales personally, because also as you lose fat, you're also gaining muscle. So you might not actually lose anything. I mean, you're thinking, Christ, I've not lost anything. But actually, when you look at yourself and when you put your clothes on, your body's changed. So, you know, you've got to be careful. Don't get obsessed by the scales, I would say.
Right, so I think because we are probably got about another, well, we'll go, we've got a couple of questions. So I'm gonna we'll Sergio asked diet and how to drop a dress size. I think we've probably covered that by in this conversation. So Trisha was asking about fasting, 1 meal a day or no protein, only veg. I mean, Jane, I think you're probably the best person to answer that.
Well, it was you who told me to do this. So like when I plateaued a bit, or like since I've, you know, been at my target weight and if I put on a few pounds, what I do is I just choose a day where I know I can do it. So usually it might be a day when I know I'm not going to do a WAFA class, or I'm not going to do any really heavy exertion. So I might have a meal, my dinner, a little bit earlier, say 5:30 than I would normally. We normally eat about 7. So I'd say have just a normal dinner about 5:30, and then I will not eat anything until 24 hours later. So obviously you've got your sleep time in that, but I will go till, sometimes I do 22 hours, so I'd go to 3:30 the next day would be when I would eat, or I would go the full 24 and go to 5:30. So I would obviously drink plenty of water and like herbal tea, so I'd have my licorice tea if I wanted that, but I wouldn't eat anything for 24 hours. And that sounds horrendous, but actually if you just did that once in the week, it's really not. And there's a lot of, supposedly, I read the book Anna told me, there's supposedly a lot of health benefits with doing that once a week. It just gives your body literally a rest from dealing with food. Very important you keep your fluids up though, water. But just, so that's what fasting is for me. And I don't do it every week, I just do it now and again. I mean, when you told me to do it, I did, I think, once a week for about a month. And I lost a good few more pounds once I'd plateaued. And it just seemed to, I don't know what it does. It seems to kickstart your metabolism. I've no idea what it does really, but it works for me. And I've done it I do it now and again if I feel, if I've had a really heavy weekend or I've been really naughty, or then I will just do it. And I feel, and it just psychologically as well, just gets me straight back on track.
Yeah, and there's plenty of stuff out there, and I've got some books that people can read, but there's all different types of fasting. But you have to, the thing about fasting is, I think you have to be in absolutely the right mindset for it, and understand what you're doing, that it's not a way of you then stuffing your face when you
you would just have another normal meal the next. Yeah.
So I've got another question. Alcohol is my downfall. Any substitutes or snack tea options anyone has? So Emma or Jane? Okay, hang on, Emma. I'm just going to mute you, Jane. Emma.
I think alcohol is a really interesting one, because obviously we all know that alcohol can have quite a high sugar content, and so the calorie content within it. But also I've been looking into it a little bit. There's also a theory that it's not necessarily the alcohol and the content of the sugars there, but also what that then spurs you to eat afterwards. So I think with alcohol, for me, I've never been an alcohol drinker every single day, but I do love a drink. So I haven't really changed up my drinking habits, to be honest. So I would say, actually, is it about you need to cut back alcohol, or is it about you need to then watch what alcohol makes you do? God, I sound like a teacher. Oh, alcohol makes you do silly things. But, I know that that's something that can affect me that way. I think, oh, I'll have some nuts, and then it all just can go downhill. So that I put that one out there just as for people to think about. But in terms of substitutes, I saw Michelle's answer flip up. I think she says kombucha, which I've never tried. So I think that was really helpful for Michelle to share. I tend to think about how can I still have alcohol but with less calories, if that's the issue that you're looking at. So there are certain spirits or no sugar tonic or no sugar lemonade, things like that, so you still feel like you're getting things. But mine is cordials with like soda water or sparkling water, something like that, which still gives you something a little bit more interesting. I'm not a huge tea drinker. Jane's probably a good person to speak about sort of different teas. I know she's into her teas, but it's just things that give you a little different flavour. But avoid juices. Obviously juices have got really good things for you, but in huge quantities they're no good. But one tip about juices is I put a tiny bit into like a large cup and make almost that into a cordial if you like the taste of the juice. Yeah, so maybe not that helpful, but those are my things that I do.
No, that is really helpful. And also, when you start tracking the alcohol, because what people tend to do is they'll track the food, and then you know, you have one glass of wine, you say, I'll put that in my tracker. Then you have another glass of wine, you're like, I'll just forget that one. Then you have the whole bottle and you've completely forgotten that. And then the next day you wake up with a hangover and you're like, I'm definitely not tracking everything I'm going to eat today. So I think you have to have an honest conversation with yourself about, you know, how important is the weight loss to you, so that, and what is your goal at the end of it. So what, you know, what is, when you're thinking about weight loss, what is it that you want to achieve beyond the weight loss? And I talk about this in the 6-week program, the Goals 101, that you're not just saying, oh, I want to lose 2 stone. You have to think about what it means to you to lose that 2 stone. How do you think you're going to be feeling? What do you want to be able to do that you can't do today? You know, do you want to be running? Do you want to be able to play with your kids without being out of breath? Those are the things that are really, really important. And you have to they have to be so important that when you are going through your weight loss journey or whatever it is, that in those moments of weakness that you can kind of go, well, actually, if I have this bottle of wine, is this going to make me feel better? Is this going to help me get to my goals? If the answer is no, then you've got a choice to make. You have to say, well, am I going to continue with this bottle of wine, or am I going to make a different choice, choose something alternative? And then if you do end up having that bottle of wine, as Emma said, you know, don't beat yourself. Oh, I think it was Jane said, don't beat yourself up about it. We spend years sort of going in this perpetual cycle of shaming ourselves constantly. And all that leads to is just negative thoughts and feelings. And actually, if you just, as Jane said, I think also, don't say, oh, I'm going to be good tomorrow. Actually, what you want to say is, I'm just going to go back to normal tomorrow when you've had a bad day. So don't, in that mindset, think, oh, I've got to be good today. It's about just being normal and having a drink because you feel like it and want to enjoy it. And actually, when you do that, it becomes a lot easier for your body to adjust and to help you with the getting to your goals. I know some people have to go. We're sort of running, but I feel like we could do this all over again. There's so much here, isn't there? There was, so Natalie has just said 8 p.m. is when I start snacking. Okay, alternatives to munching on the wrong things when you're watching a film. So I think Jane's the best person. I would think, Natalie, it's about finding, as Jane said, finding an alternative that you can have. And again, it is about sometimes, and I've talked about this before, and I'm going to say this one, sometimes the situation and response, you have to allow space. So when you feel that moment of like, oh, I really want those crisps in the cupboard, just stop for a minute and just allow your brain to kind of go, well, why, and question it. Why do I want these crisps? What is it that, what am I going to get from eating these crisps? Is it going to be benefiting me? Give yourself some time, or say to yourself, do you know what? I'm going to wait 10 minutes before I go to get that bag of crisps. And just see what happens and give yourself time before that knee-jerk reaction of like, I've got to have that hit. And actually just sometimes exploring it and maybe just reminding yourself of what you want to gain from weight loss or the goals you've set yourself. Just remind yourself of that thing. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes that can help you work through that moment of that habit. And also, and then sometimes you can go, actually, I feel all right now. I don't really need those crisps. So no. Jane, do you want to say anything?
No, I think it's right. Just for me, I think it's just getting to know when those pinch points are. For me, as I said, it was when I used to sit down and watch a 9 o'clock drama, and it was out of just having to do something more than anything. I wasn't even feeling hungry. So I think you've just got, so it might even be, if you're not hungry, just have a, you know, like I said, have a cup of tea, have a glass of water, you know, have you know, something. But if you've got like a sugar craving or something like that, have a sweet tea, you know, or even put some honey in it. That's not bad. But just I think just learn to find those why do you feel like you need to do that? Because a lot of the time, you know, it's not because you're hungry. It's really not because you're hungry. So like Anna said, just give yourself that space and think about it. And that's usually, and think about your goals and what you're doing and why you're doing it. It all comes back to why you're doing it. You're doing it for yourself, and just give yourself a good talking to and remind yourself. And sometimes that's enough and you won't do it. But if you do need to have something, then just go for, like I said, a sweet tea. Even a glass of water sometimes will just be enough to stop you craving something.
Yeah, and yes, you can still hear me. So I'm going to wrap this up in a moment. Just one very quick thing. Julia was asking about doing the challenge and the 12-hour fun percent. I mean, they can go hand in hand. I'm actually going to kick off the 28-day. So as Emma was a window when we went into lockdown mode, but I would like to start it next week. So anyone that wants to jump on board with that, please do. But absolutely, why not say, right, from next week, I'm going to spend this weekend. Lord knows we've got plenty of time, right? Spend this time going through the Body Fix and 6 resources. I'm going to start setting myself a 6-week plan. And then I'm also going to think about my training. One of the things that we have in the resource portal is the weekly planner, which is really useful, where you can highlight all the things, your exercise you're going to be doing. I would say social commitments, but we haven't got much of that at the moment. But it is worth spending some time planning your week. So what you don't want to be doing is going into the week thinking, oh, what am I going to eat today? Or, actually, why don't you plan the next 2 weeks worth of food, what you're going to be eating, and prepare in advance. Have it listed out so you know exactly what you're going to be eating, because it's all down to food. And then also look at the classes you're going to be attending as well. So those of you who are joining in the 12-hour challenge, yeah, you want to be doing slightly more than 3 classes a week. So anyway, ladies, I think I'm going to have to wrap this up, because I should imagine I was expecting this to be half an hour, but actually, thank you so much, Emma and Jane. I really, really appreciate this. And I think that I think we've all learned so much from this, I myself included. And I think that if anything, ladies watching this thinking, I really want to be like Jane and Emma, well, they all started where you're at. Okay, so this is about now you looking and thinking, okay, now I do want to make some changes. What is it you're going to do? More than happy to help any of you if you want a one-to-one. So that's it from me. I'm going to say goodbye from me, and thank you once again, Emma and Jane. See you, ladies. Enjoy your Easter. Bye.